I'm Seth for Privacy, and thanks so much for joining us on the journey to sovereignty. We're beyond thrilled to have a place for us to chat about all things sovereignty, the why and how we're reclaiming your digital sovereignty, and to give you all a chance to chime in, ask questions, and join the conversation. Journey to Sovereignty is brought to you by Foundation, where we build Bitcoin-centric tools that empower you to reclaim your digital sovereignty. This includes our Passport hardware wallet and Envoy mobile app. This week, we're going to dive into the world of multisig and are joined by Anant from Bitcoin Keeper, a new Bitcoin multisig wallet that's leapt onto the scene in the last few months. We'll answer the basic questions that are commonly asked around multisig, dive into the pros and cons, and hear a bit from Keeper on how they're approaching multisig in a fresh way. Of course, I'm joined by Bitcoin Q&A, head of customer experience here at Foundation as well today. How's it going, everybody?
Doing well, Seth. Sorry, I was double muted there. Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm really happy to be joined by our first external guest on the podcast. So welcome to Anand.
Awesome. Well, why don't we just go ahead and start off by giving you a chance to introduce yourself, Anand, and tell us a little bit about what you do and what Bitcoin Keeper does.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. My name is Anand Tapadia. I'm the CEO and founder of BitHive, a company that has two self-custody products, and Keeper is the multisig product that we are going to talk about today. Keeper is essentially a product that is designed for long-term security of your Bitcoins. It uses multisig as a tool, but it has many other neat features that we'll talk about soon. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for walking us through that. I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts as we kind of walk through what multisig is, because obviously your team has a lot of experience with building out an app around that. So looking forward to that. But like always, I really want to start off by going back to basics and laying the groundwork. I'm sure some people in the audience have heard of multisig. Maybe some have even used it or use it right now for securing their Bitcoin. But I think for a lot of people, it's kind of shrouded in mystery as a concept, and most people don't actually use it day to day. So let's just kind of start with what is multisig and how is it different from regular Bitcoin usage, which sometimes is called single sig.
Yeah, so I guess I'll jump in first and I'll let Anand cap off my sort of thoughts. So yeah, as you correctly alluded to, Seth, the typical usage of Bitcoin is commonly referred to as single sig. So what does that really mean? So single sig refers to a single signature where we would have just a single point of authority to be able to spend some Bitcoin. Now that signature can come from a piece of software on a computer, your phone, or a hardware device like we produce. The key bit is that there's just one piece of information or one secret that is required to be able to authorize any spend transactions. Now that is ultimately one of the most simple ways that you can interact with Bitcoin, and is probably why that it's the most commonly used method or storage method to be able to keep your Bitcoin safe and to spend your Bitcoin. Where multisig comes in is, the clue's kind of in the name, really, where you need multiple signatures to be able to authorize any spend transactions. So you can create any number of different types of multi-signature wallets. Could be something as simple as a 2 of 2 multisig, where you use 2 keys or pieces of software to construct the wallet, and you need a signature from both of them to be able to authorize any spend transactions. If you only have one device or one piece of software, then that will not provide enough signatures, and the transaction is not valid. So that essentially the rest of the Bitcoin network will reject that. And these signing schemes, or multisig quorums, as they're sometimes called by people who've been around in the space a little bit longer, can get as extravagant as 11 of 15 maybe in kind of a large business setting. Of course, something like that is not typically used by the average Bitcoiner that's probably listening to this. The most common setup that is used today more frequently would be a 2 of 3, again, where there's 3 keys. Traditionally, these are mainly hardware wallets, and you require a signature from 2 of those to be able to authorize any spend transactions.
I think that was very well explained. The only thing I would like to add here is, rather not really add, is further detail is that people sometimes get confused between what the keys are, where they are stored and stuff. So if you really break down, you forget single sig or multisig, but if you take a single key and you just look at what are the 4 different functions it performs, then you might be better able to understand how you multiply or extrapolate it to a multisig. So the way I look at it is there are essentially four key parts to it. One is how is the key generated, right? Where does the entropy come from basically? Then how are you storing it? That's the second piece. The third piece is how are you using to sign it, right? And the fourth piece is basically is your the signing device that you're using, is that online or offline? If you take these four factors, so for example you could generate the initial entropy using dice rolls or cards or maybe a wallet entropy, and then you can use the seed word on a steel backup plate to essentially back it up and store it. You might use seed signer and put those details in seed signer every time you want to sign a transaction, and then you might have a completely different wallet, a blue wallet or a keeper or whatever, where you are using it for all the other wallet functionalities like address generation and stuff. So these four pieces always remain with any key generation, or the how keys are used. Now keys are obviously pair, public private key pair, and there are a lot of other aspects to it, but these are the key areas that differ, and every time you vary one of them you get a different configuration. Similarly, what you would do is each of the key in a multisig would be performing the same four functions. All, let's say you have a 2 of 3 scheme, you might be generating all the three keys in different ways. You might store it in a very different way, right? You might use a very different signing mechanism for each of them. So that is what really helped me understand the relationship between single sig and multisig. Multisig is literally multiple pieces of the same thing. There are a few nuances there, but that is basically a good starting point, I would say.
Yeah, I'm glad that you covered the pieces that are involved in key storage, signing, and generation for each, because that is true of single sig and multisig, that all of those factors still apply, but multisig obviously multiplies the importance of each of those steps, especially how you're going to store it, how you're going to have access to devices, or how people in the quorum are going to have access to devices to actually sign transactions. It's important to understand those pieces there. Yeah, I think y'all did a great job covering that, diving into a little bit of what multisig is. But I think another piece that I want to really touch on is what are the biggest drawbacks when it comes to multisig? Because I think a lot of times people talk about the benefits, and there are a lot of really interesting use cases for multisig. But I want to be sure that we cover the drawbacks too before we get too in depth into what multisig can do for kind of the average person.
Absolutely. I was about to kind of add on that this is what the differences are, but there are some trade-offs. So it's not simply multiplying the same aspects to three different keys, but then there are this the basic thing of locking your door once versus locking your door thrice is obviously operationally longer. So that's one trade-off. That to establish a multisig, it is a much longer operational process than a single sig. So that's one trade-off. The other trade-off is this whole concept of a wallet configuration file, which is sometimes referred to as output descriptor, or sometimes it's referred to as the standard is referred to as BSMS. Basically, it means that you need to know where your wallet is in the whole key space. You might have the three keys, or you might have two of the three keys, but unless you know which wallet to open, because there can be infinite number of wallets with the same three keys. So unless you know which exact wallet to open, multisig wallet to open, you will not be able to open the right wallet, or even if you open, you might not find your funds there. So that's called like the map or the wallet configuration file. Now, why does that problem not come in single sig? Is because in single sig, the xpub is implied from the seed. So if you have the seed, there is only one xpub possible, and you can use it. Even in case of multisig, if it was a 3 of 3 multisig, then you could generate the standard xpubs from the seeds. But since we are trying to make it a little more resilient, by having a 2 of 3 or 3 of 5 scheme in such a way that user has some, there's a way for user to lose some keys but still be able to access their funds. That is where you need to know what role the other keys that you're not using, what are they playing in generating the receive addresses. And that in short is the xpub and path for the other keys that are not going to get used. So these are the two trade-offs or complexities that I could think of.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. I think to kind of take it a step back and keep it sort of simple and approachable, Anant alluded to the fact that there's extra pieces of information that you need to be for this to be secure and for your backups to be robust enough. And to break that down for the average user, if you have a single signature wallet, then you have just one crucial piece of information that you need to secure from theft, fire, water, etc., and loss, and that's your seed words. As long as you keep that safe, somewhere safe, and you're protected from most eventualities. With a multi-signature, you have in the common setup of a 2 or 3. That means you've got 3 things to look after. That will be potentially 3 hardware wallets, depending on how you set the device up. And then you've also got 3 lots of seed words for each of those hardware wallets, and also the multisig config file that Anant was talking about as well. Now, you can bundle some of those pieces of information together, but ultimately you're going to need at least 3 secure locations to keep some of your backup material. Now, obviously, everybody's in different situations, but it doesn't go without saying that a lot of people don't have access to 3 secure locations where they'd be comfortable leaving private key material. So that's a big one for me when I'm making considerations and certainly recommendations to others in terms of how or when they should, or if they should move to multisig at all, is that having that secure location to be able to back up those all important information that Anant and I have just covered.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on the multiple locations, because I think that's one that a lot of people forget about, because if you're doing something like a 2 of 3, and I think it's probably a good example to kind of use moving forward, if you're using a 2 of 3 multi-sig, but you store all 3 seeds together in the same drawer in your house or whatever, you're not gaining any security from it. If someone walks into your house and picks up those 3 seeds, they have everything, well, assuming you have xpubs there or a wallet config file as well, they have everything they need to steal those funds. So you do need those multiple secure locations for each of those pieces for it to really make sense to do a multi-key multi-sig. Or if you're doing it where it's not just you as a key holder, but there are other people you trust who you want to be key holders, I think that situation makes a little bit more sense, because then it's easier. In theory, you trust them to keep their key material, keep their seed, keep their xpub, keep a wallet config file. But if you are just doing just you, then it is something where you need to remember that you need multiple places to keep these keys safe. And thankfully, like in a 2 of 3, you can afford to lose one of them or have one of them stolen or destroyed in a fire or whatever. But you can only afford that one to be lost before you have issues. So it's a really key detail that I think sometimes gets forgotten in the multi-sig space.
Yeah, I think also just to drive that point home a little bit more, in the last couple of years, we've seen the world be locked down almost overnight. And there's often a lot of talk of, geographically distributed multisig or, cross-jurisdictional multisig, where people are talking about the benefits of keeping their keys in different countries and how secure that is, which I'm not disputing that fact. But there's a very real possibility if something like that was to ever happen again and you need to spend your Bitcoin in a hurry, then that you simply can't. You would essentially be locked out temporarily from your Bitcoin. And if you need to make a transaction in a hurry and you need to fly across the world to access a couple of your keys, that's going to be a big problem for you. So it's something that that should be very, very carefully considered when you're talking about the quorum of a multi-sig setup, but also where you're going to keep each of those keys as well to be able to ensure that it's not too easy to access. In the example you gave, Seth, where they're all in your top drawer, or taking it to the other extreme that I've just talked about, where they're in 3 corners of the globe and the world's on lockdown and you can't get anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even if someone uses multisig, there is no way that they do not need a single sig. So single sig is definitely needed for your regular operations. In fact, a multi-sig security reduces if you do not have a single sig corresponding wallet. What would happen is that if you just rely on multisig, then you would end up accessing those keys again and again and again. And accessing a multisig quorum of multisig keys reduces the security of those keys. So it goes without saying that you do need a single sig to keep your multisig secure. It's kind of it's funny to say that, but that's true. You do need single sig wallets to keep your multisig wallet safe. You need to make sure that you understand that the multisig wallet is more about long-term cold storage stuff, and it is not something you would need it in 3 to 6 months time at least, if not more. Most of the guys we have been speaking to, they want to have cold storage, which is like they don't need it for years, and then they have various hot wallets where they keep their daily cash or regular funds. So it's very important to understand that single sig doesn't go away. Multisig is only in addition to a single sig.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it kind of mirrors the recommendations that are normal as well for a hardware wallet, where normally you have a hot wallet on your phone or maybe on your desktop that you can spend from easily, and then you use your hardware wallet for storage of larger amounts. So I think a very similar concept applies to multi-sig, but it's an interesting call out to the security aspect, which I hadn't thought about as much there.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why in Keeper, the Keeper as a product, see, Keeper is not, like I was stressing upon, Keeper is not a multisig product. It's not like multisig is the end, multisig is the means, and therefore if the job of security has to be done properly for the user, it is important that there are single sig or hot wallets available that the user can use easily. If Keeper only had multisig, then actually that multisig would be less secure, like I said. So Keeper does give you option of multiple hot wallets, which is made much more convenient with the help of BIP 85, which I have put out a lot about. But essentially, that is key piece of the puzzle, without which the whole security is not really complete.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great run through there. So I feel like we've bashed multi-sig enough and talked about a lot of the negatives. I do want to be sure that we talk about some of the use cases that are important for people and that can be used. So I think two main things I want to look at are, what are some of the key uses you see with multi-sig for kind of the average normal Bitcoiner? And then what are the uses that you see for businesses or larger projects?
So, like I said, multi-sig, or like Michael Flaxman would really love to stress this point, is that multi-sig offers you additional places where you can you can commit a mistake. Because let's say if you have 3 of 5 or 2 of 3, then doing a mistake, or losing one of the keys, or maybe exposing or not backing it up correctly, actually doesn't hurt you as much. But if you do that in single sig, that is the end of story, right? So it gives you additional places where you can make mistakes for at an individual level. And as things get streamlined with the help of the work you guys are doing, other hardware wallets are becoming more and more multisig friendly. Taproot and Music and other things are coming on. It is the trajectory of self custody is moving towards easier use of multiple keys. Now that is the application for individuals, and we genuinely believe that it is something that should not be very difficult, and is not very difficult if we grow with the ecosystem in the right way, right? When it comes to enterprise, actually it lends itself very easily, because what an enterprise really means, there are two things when you compare individual needs versus an enterprise needs. One, in the case of enterprise, you have natural roles which are different. It's not one individual. So there are natural roles which are different. They perform different functions, and they can have different rights. And this is very easy when we talked about people holding different keys instead of one single person trying to find different geographical locations. So that's a very easy fix. If there are like 4 co-founders or 5 co-founders, then they can simply probably create a multisig between themselves. So that part of role works very well with enterprises. The other part of enterprise is that enterprises, especially the one which are properly registered, are by default much more public than individuals. At least in UK and other places that I have learned from, you have to file your accounts. You have to make a lot of things public. So they are a lot of enterprises are okay if they are helped by uh, you know um, they are helped with the help of, with collaborative services or assisted multisig. So they are not really they want someone to help them out in a professional way. So that makes it much easier. So multisig, yes, it lends itself very well to the enterprise situation as well. I think the other benefits like inheritance and social recovery or taking help from others for recovering are all the use cases that multisig exposes. One thing we have to really understand that there is no analogy to multisig in the real world. That is why people it is difficult to understand when we put on especially an n of m multisig, where you need some of the keys to unlock the whole thing, but you don't really need all of the keys. That's really not easily something that we see in the rest of the world. In the financial world, our account is only our account. A joint account is like between both of them. I have not seen a tool or a vehicle where you can have like 5 people and you need three to sign. You can create a trust and all that. There are complicated ways to do it, but not in a sovereign and independent way. So that it is slightly difficult to comprehend because there is no analogy, but it is actually quite neat, and it's kind of a super. It's one of the original smart contracts that natively exists in Bitcoin, which doesn't, by the way, exist in most other blockchains.
So one of the main benefits of multisig is that it removes what we call single points of failure, which is a single piece of information or location that, if it was compromised, would result in you losing 100% access to your Bitcoin and bye-bye sats. So to put that into perspective, with a single signature wallet, that could be your seed words in plain text being compromised by a nosy family member, or it being set on fire accidentally if your house catches fire. That's a single point of failure, and that's one of the downsides of single sig. There are some nuanced ways that you can kind of work around that to protect against that, but obviously we're focused on multisig here, which is one of the key ways that you can mitigate against single points of failure. So we talked about earlier that you would introduce additional keys. A common one would be a 2 of 3 multisig quorum, where you use three keys, and you need 2 of them to spend. So in that setup, if you were to lose complete access to one of your hardware wallets, providing that you've got access to either the 2 other hardware wallets or their seed word backups and the multisig configuration file that Anant was talking about earlier, then you can restore full access to your Bitcoin to be able to spend those out to a new wallet, so that you can create that new wallet so that you've got control of 100% of the keys again, and sort of what we call kind of rotate out the compromised key. So that's one of the main benefits of multisig, and obviously as the quorums grow in size, the sort of ability for loss kind of grows a little bit with that as well. So in a 3 of 5 setup, which is also commonly used, you can lose access to 2 keys and still be able to spend your Bitcoin. Obviously, you've got the trade-off that we talked about earlier with extra pieces of information that need to be managed. So again, you should be making carefully considered choices when choosing your quorum size and signing thresholds. But yeah, definitely one of the main benefits that I see of multisig.
Yeah, and one more that I would add too is I think a lot of people don't see that multisig is actually really beneficial when we're building decentralized tools on Bitcoin as well. And for anybody who's used BISC exists and works because of multisig on Bitcoin. It used to be 2 of 3, where the 2 participants in the trade would hold keys, and then I can't think of the word that they use, an arbitrator would hold the third key in case of disputes. But they were actually able to phase that out and do 2 of 2. So now the people participating in the trade can use that multisig wallet to either perfectly dispense funds or to not dispense funds and have an arbitrator step in and help. And you're able to do that on Bitcoin, on chain, removing the trust from the other party because of multisig on Bitcoin. It's also a really big deal for tools like atomic swaps, which are something that have been talked about for a really long time, but haven't really materialized or seen too wide of usage. But things like atomic swaps with Ethereum or Monero or other cryptocurrencies are a big aspect of multisig as well. And it's a key way that we're able to build out those tools on Bitcoin. And then the most popular one that people might not realize multisig is key for is actually Lightning. So when you're using the Lightning network and opening channels, you're using multisig. You just don't realize it because all of that's abstracted away. So there's a lot of really important use cases that multisig enables on Bitcoin, even if you're not consciously creating a multisig wallet for storing sats, but it enables a lot of really powerful things on chain.
I was about to say that you might be forgetting Lightning, and even stuff like Fediment and a lot of other things. Multisig does power a lot of layer 2 stuff on Bitcoin.
Yeah, Fediment is a great example of that as well, especially of the specific use cases where there's a clear benefit because you want to remove trust from any specific person in that quorum, and you want to make them have to collaborate. So Fediment is another great example there.
I think you just said something very important here. Remove trust. I wouldn't say remove trust, but the way I would put it, minimize trust in any one of those parties. That is the benefit of multisig. That happens when you are doing it for individuals, enterprise, at a community level in Fediment or whatever. Even in case of Lightning. So in case of individuals, if you have a 2 of 3 multisig with 3 separate hardware wallets, and one hardware wallet is completely compromised, let's say Blockstream has built a backdoor in their Jade wallet, they still cannot touch your funds. They would really have to collude with other hardware wallets to make sure that they can steal your funds. So it is a very good trust minimizing mechanism.
Yeah, that's a great clarification there, because it doesn't remove it, but minimizing the trust is a key aspect. And I hadn't really thought of phrasing it like that for when you're the only participant, but you have multiple keys. But it's true, because especially in that case of like minimizing the risk of like an intercepted hardware wallet that's compromised or something like that. It really is still about minimizing trust there. So I think that's a really good key. Anything else?
See what you're doing. You see what you're doing at every step is, let's say you have a wallet and you just use the hot wallet. That's like completely relying on that wallet. Now you put a cold storage and you make that wallet as a watch only wallet, and you keep the keys in a cold card. Now you have split the trust between two separate entities, and none of them single-handedly can steal your funds. In multisig, you take it one step further. That single signing capability you divide it further into 3 parts or 4 parts or 5 parts. So you see how you are trying to minimize the trust in any one entity, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at multisig, I think a lot of the drawbacks, a lot of the hesitation that people have experienced, even if we're not looking at like the backups or the maybe the difficulty to keep that key material, but a lot of it I think is hinged on the actual user experience of multisig being very, very tricky to get right, and having been something that I feel like the space has struggled with in the past. It feels like it's never quite there. But I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts. Do you think that that's changing? I mean, I assume Anant that you do with what y'all are doing at Keeper, but I'd love to hear your thoughts with like how things like Sparrow are changing it as well.
See what has changed. So there were a lot of multisig solutions even, let's say, in 2010-11, like at a project level and people trying to do it. But what has changed since then is there are a lot of standards which have emerged. One, because of Taproot and because of the focus on the BIPs, there have been more understanding of the benefits of multisig. That's one part of it. But even practically enabling multisig, PSBT was not really very well adopted in the community. That has happened in the last 1 or 2 years. Formats like output descriptors, BSMS, that was not there. All these standards coming together, plus capabilities like NFC, Bluetooth, QR code, animated QR code, these things have come together in the literally last 1 year, 18 months. So something that was very difficult, let's say even 18 months back, is actually substantially, I would say, order of magnitude easier right now. So if you use Sparrow or Keeper, there's always something better to be done. And operationally, because there are multiple keys, you have to do more number of steps. But honestly, there is very little complexity left. It is, instead of one key, there are three keys. You have to sign with two of them, and there is an additional file that you have to store multiple. That's it. That's all there is to it. Everything else, every good practice that you would do with single sig, that is what you would repeat with multisig anyway. So I think that 2023 and 24, we will see a lot more people using multisig as their long-term cold storage mechanism.
Yeah, some great points. I think aside from the standard side of thing at a technical level, the main thing that I've noticed in the last pretty much 2 years is, before 2 years ago we had, you had Electrum for multisig and maybe one or two others, and you look at the space now. You've got obviously you've got Sparrow Wallet Spectre on desktop as well as Electrum, and then you've also got an absolute plethora of mobile options, which was, mobile multisig was literally didn't exist until fairly recently, and now we've got, Keeper, Nunchuk, and aside from that, we've also got collaborative custody solutions like Casa and Unchained as well, which are, take some other trade-offs, but also, open multisig out to other people as well. So I think a huge one has been UX, particularly in the last 12 to 18 months. Just the quality of the user interface that's people have got open to them now to be able to interact with multiple keys at the same time, be that on mobile or on desktop, has just come on leaps and bounds.
Yeah, it definitely has been exciting to see I feel like, renewed focus on multisig that's been happening over the past couple of years. And I feel like it really is improving at a rapid pace. And like you said, Anant, I feel like this year, maybe next year, are going to be really big as people start to latch more onto both personal multisig and the collaborative custody approaches as well. I think you're going to continue to grow in usage there. Are there any specifics with Keeper that you're trying to tackle, these type of like user experience issues? Anything you're doing different, or anything you want to kind of highlight there?
I think, like I alluded to earlier, we want to really do a job for the user and not really make it like a multisig playground. So we have kept things intentionally simple. You cannot probably create multiple multisig vaults in Keeper. You cannot have like a 10 of 12 multisig or any configuration you want. So we have intentionally, it is very easy to implement once you have implemented the basics, but we have intentionally simplified it and restricted it to something that the user really wants. Maybe there will be 5% of the users who really want something else, which we can't offer, but by focusing on the rest of the 95%, we are able to streamline the UX. We're not trying to, be all of multisig, right? And that is the key focus that applies to the hot wallets we have, that applies to the inheritance we have, and we are working on stuff like time locks and mini scripts. all are all are focused towards providing something that is simple and secure, and not necessarily exotic and difficult, and cutting edge for that matter.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the approach that we've taken at Foundation, where we're targeting that the majority of users, not necessarily the hardcore user, even though I feel like we've done a good job keeping a lot of the hardcore use cases implemented and maintained. But we're really trying to make sure that people can very approachably store Bitcoin, both in single sig and multi-sig setups. So I appreciate that focus on more the average user than necessarily the hardcore Bitcoiner that maybe has more niche use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. That is actually that is the crux of UX. You really need to focus on your audience. Who is the target audience? What are you really trying to achieve? And just have laser focus on it.
Awesome. Thank y'all. Well, we are running a little bit longer today, so I want to try to get through the last three questions pretty quickly. The first one, maybe I'll just throw this to Q&A to quickly answer, but what has kind of been the focus with us at Foundation with simplifying multi-sig usage specifically?
Yeah, good question. So obviously, Passport comes with its own camera on the back of the device, and one of the things we do when we walk you through any of the multisig connection flows that are built into the device, we've got custom flows for Keeper, Spectre, Sparrow, anything like that we support. It all has its own custom flow. One of the final steps is that we ask you to import the multisig configuration, and we allow you to do that via a QR code or an animated QR code, again, depending on the size of your multisig quorum. So what that means is that you can notify your device that it's part of a specific quorum, and you'll actually import the public keys of all of the other devices or signers that form part of that wallet. So you can do that in a couple of seconds just with a scan of a QR code. And by doing that, what that means is that the device can, when you're signing multisig transactions in the future, the device will be able to verify all of your receive and change addresses automatically when you're just going through that sign-in flow. We do also afford the user the option to do that manually as well. Again, just so if they were to open Keeper Wallet and press receive and then scan that receiving address, Passport will verify that the address being displayed by Keeper is actually one that belongs properly to that multi-sig configuration that's been imported. So that's kind of a bit of a check and a balance against, let's say, a user downloading a dodgy version of Spectre, Sparrow, Keeper, whatever multi-sig coordinator that they're using. And outside of that, we're just big on adopting the standards and ensuring that we've got wide compatibility. So, Anand touched on all of the standards that are currently well documented within Bitcoin with respect to multisig today. We're compatible with all of those, and we also ensure just wide compatibility so that our users have got the choice to go to any of the possible multisig coordinators, depending on their preference, be that mobile or a desktop solution.
Yeah, really big on optionality, and that's one of the reasons why we love new wallets like Keeper popping up, because we can quickly add support. Actually, it technically worked even before we officially added support, but we can quickly add that and make sure that our users can enjoy whatever wallet they prefer to use as their actual like software wallet, and then use Passport as one of the keys there. So definitely a key focus for us.
This is one of the things we missed when I talked about why is multisig different today from what it was 2 years back, right? It is with people like yourselves who are actually understanding it better now, and putting it the right efforts in. So that was not the case a couple of years back. So yeah, you guys are playing a good role in that trajectory as well.
For sure. Well, last two questions really quickly. What are some of the most interesting and innovative use cases of multisig you've seen pop up recently? Maybe we can just kind of do these rapid fire so we can get to some questions from the audience before we close out today.
Yeah, for me, real quick, the main two, collaborative custody, Casa, Unchained, Nunchuk, Keeper, just the options to kind of delegate the control of one key whilst not losing, overall control of the wallet itself is going to lower the bar to entry. Don't get me wrong, there's some trade-offs to be had with that in terms of privacy and whatnot, but it's definitely lowering the bar to entry to multisig. And the other one for me would be, and again, I'm not just saying it because Anant's here, is mobile multisig. We live in a mobile first world, so a lot of people don't even have a computer. So to be able to access all of these features and Bitcoin security benefits from your mobile phone with some additional hardware is a big win for me.
Anything you wanted to add on there or not?
No, I will just add that use cases are covered, but additional optionality within multisig is also something that has popped up. For example, if you want in Keeper, if you want to use a phone that is lying around in your top drawer and is not getting used, you can use it as part of a quorum of 5 keys. Now, using that individually for single sig would have not been the best decision or the wisest decision. But if you want to use that, or for example a tap sign or a simple $20 NFC key store, then that's completely fine. It increases your security. But that's not possible if you are just having a single key. You wouldn't do that with a lot of funds.
Yeah, definitely love that growing optionality there as well. So last but not least, what practical recommendation, maybe we'll just keep it to one recommendation, do you have for those who want to use multisig today, or maybe are already even using multisig?
Yeah, I'll hop in. My main one is always about inheritance. Multisig offers some great security benefits when done correctly. But the question I always pose people who are saying, should I move to multisig is, if you set one up and then got hit by a bus tomorrow, is your wife, husband, spouse, whoever it is, going to be able to access your Bitcoin? Just a question to think about. And, there's a lot of trade-offs in that in terms of, potentially leaving a treasure map or trusting people with different keys, but that introduces, certain levels of trust depending on how you do it. So not an easy problem to fix. And it's very much a personal situation depending on who you've got around you, who you trust, and what places or locations you've got to keep different bits of information.
Yeah, I think that was spot on. Another quick thing that people could do to convince themselves and be comfortable with multisig is just test it out. Just try it out. It is, let's say if you try it out on Sparrow and Keeper and Nunchuck, you would realize that it is not that difficult. So yeah, just give it a try.
Yeah, testnet is definitely your friend, and it's another great way to explore using a feature of Bitcoin without actually putting sats at risk. So testing out multisig on testnet is a great way to kind of get your hands dirty there. Thanks for jumping in for this episode of Journey to Sovereignty, and I hope you'll join us for our next live Twitter space every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT. Joining us live gives you a chance to listen in, participate, and get your questions answered on the spot. Follow us at Foundation DVCS on Twitter to keep up with the latest news, get notifications when we go live, and much more. See you at the next one, and thanks for joining us on the Journey to Sovereignty.